So at 3:41, you received the decision note from the clerk. We call it the invocation memo. Technically, it's a decision note. And presumably you read it.
Yes.
Okay. And was there anything in it that surprised you? Was that the advice you were expecting to get from the clerk, or was it?
It was the advice that was consistent with the consensus around the table the day before at the IRG. The clerk and the National Security and Intelligence Advisor and the deputy clerk and all the heads of departments and agencies had a chance to weigh in on the various measures and on the invocation. And there was a clear consensus coming out of there that this is what we should do. But it was a big thing, not a small thing, to have the head of the public service formally recommend the invocation of the Emergencies Act and the declaration of a public order emergency. It's not something that had ever been done in Canada before. It was certainly not something that we undertook to do lightly. And as a Prime Minister, I get to sign off and agree with these notes, or in some cases disagree with them. And that was a moment that I took with the weight of the decision I was about to take. And I reflected briefly on, first of all, the reassurance that it gave me that the entire system, all the inputs in the system had come up to the clerk of the Privy Council, the top public servant in Canada, impartial, professional public service, making the recommendation to move forward on this was essential to me. But I also reflected on, okay, what if I don't sign it? What if I say, okay, we now have advice from the professional public service to invoke a public order emergency. And I decide, you know what? Let's give it a few days. Where the professional public service had made a determination that the thresholds were met, that the use of it was appropriate and, responsible, and the measures were the right ones that we were going to put in it. And I said, no, you know what? Let's wait and see another few days, another week to see if we really need to do it. First of all, what if the worst had happened in those following days? What if someone had gotten hurt? What if a police officer had been put in a hospital? What if when I had an opportunity to do something, I had waited and we had the unthinkable happen over the coming days, even though there was all this warning that it was possibly coming? I would have warned that in a way that we would certainly be talking about in a forum such as this. But more than that, the responsibility of a Prime Minister is to make the tough calls and keep people safe. And this was a moment where the collective advice of Cabinet, of the public service, and my own inclination was that this was a moment to do something that we needed to do to keep Canadians safe. And knowing full well that this was an inevitable consequence of me signing, I agree, on this note, I was very comfortable that we were at a moment where this was the right thing to do. And we did it. And it is a certain amount of comfort that, first of all, the system is working as it should, that people who are defending civil liberties are able to say, you really should be careful about doing this, maybe you shouldn't have done it, that we have a system pushing back on this, because it's a big thing, not a small thing to do this. But that also we were able to solve the situation with it, that there was no loss of life, There was no, serious violence. That we were able to get neighborhoods back under control, border services opened, and there haven't been a recurrence of these kinds of illegal occupations since then. I'm not going to pretend that it's the only thing that could have done it, but it did do it. And that colors the conversations we're having now with the fact that these could be very different conversations. And I am absolutely, absolutely serene and confident that I made the right choice in agreeing with the invocation.